Chapter 14. Sink or Swim. What's so important about this Triton? Shelley asked herself. She stared through the thick glass while tourists milled around, oohing and eyeing at the main exhibit. The reef shark darted past the glass, drawing excited squeals from the crowd. But Shelley didn't flinch. The shark was harmless. He just looked scary. But also, she had bigger fish to fry. She kept her eyes fixed on the Triton in the main exhibit, trying to process everything she just learned from the sea witch. The prongs pointed upward. The Triton itself was badly corroded and covered in barnacles. Behind it, a treasure chest overflowed with faux precious gems and ancient gold coins. Or at least she thought they were faux. But then she remembered the other day. The old Triton had flashed with golden light. She'd thought it was a trick of the eye, shifting sunlight filtered through water. But what if it was something else? A sunken pirate ship towered over the scene, while fish, sharks, and the leatherback sea turtles swam around the exhibit. Sunlight rippled over everything. The Triton really did look like a rusty hunk of junk. But she caught a flash of gold again, as the sunlight shifted the same shimmering she had noticed the other day. It wasn't just her eyes playing tricks on her. Maybe it was full of magic. And if it was, what did the sea witch plan to do with it? What exactly would she use it for? And how had Shelley's family gotten involved in the first place? Enrique appeared behind her, clutching a slop bucket of fish to feed the dolphins. It was after school, when he came to the aquarium to help out his brother, who still interned there. When he saw her, he frowned. "What happened to you? Looks like you've seen a ghost." Shelley bit her lip. She could tell him. Could she? He'd just think she was imagining things. Maybe he'd even tease her about it. She started to turn away, but he stopped her. "Come on, spit it out already," he said, flashing her a mischievous grin. "I promise. I'm good at keeping secrets. The dolphins tell me all their gossip, and my lips are sealed." The dolphins gossip? Despite her stress, she cracked a smile. "Yep, they're worse than my dad's book club." He grinned, but then turned more serious. "Look, I see you here all the time, and lately you've been acting different." "Different?" she said with a start, nervous he was on to her. "How so?" "Jumpy? Quiet? Running away from me?" He frowned. "You never used to be afraid before. It's what I liked most about you. But now, it's like something changed. Ever since I pulled you out of the ocean that day you almost drowned." She hesitated. He was right. It had all started when she intentionally dropped that stupid coffee cup into the ocean, and the waves swept her out to sea. Enrique had saved her life. Shouldn't she trust him? But something stopped her. She remembered Kendall's disgusted face in the locker room when she saw Shelley's webbed hand. "Why do you care so much?" she said, torn. "It's not your problem." He grinned. "Science nerds have to stick together, right?" "Then prove it. What's the name of that fish?" She pointed to a bright orange and white fish floating in a sea anemone's glowing blue tentacles. Its adorable little face poked out. "Clownfish, also known as anemone fish." "Okay, and what are its attributes?" pressed Shelley. Enrique studied the fish as the sea anemone's tentacles caressed it. "Well, it's called anemone fish because it's symbiotic with the sea anemone. The anemone's tentacles are poisonous, but not to the clownfish. Those tentacles protect it from unwanted predators." "And that?" She pointed to two eyes in the sand. He rolled his eyes. "A flounder, obviously. Ask me a hard one next time, okay?" Shelley giggled. He really was a science nerd like her. For a moment, her troubles dissolved, but then they rushed back in like a riptide. She glanced around and lowered her voice. All right, something did happen, she started, feeling completely paranoid. Tourists milled around the exhibits, but you have to promise me that you won't think I'm crazy. I swear, he said. Cross my heart. And we can't talk here, she added. We need to talk somewhere private. He lifted the slop bucket. I know just the place. Shelley and Enrique stepped out onto the sun deck, where the aquarium looked out on the open sea. The waves rolled uneasily in the distance, while clouds built overhead. It looked like a storm was coming in over the Pacific. Cold wind whipped off the water and tousled their hair, bringing with it in the brining tang of the sea. It was a smell Shelley had once loved, but now it reminded her of evil. But instead of staying outside with the tourists, Enrique pulled her backstage behind the dolphin exhibit, where only the dolphin trainers were permitted. Private. Keep out. Signs were posted, but Enrique ignored them. He was practically staff at this point. He'd been going there with his brother Miguel for a long time, helping out and learning everything, and apparently studying Shelley like some serious creature while he was at it. Enrique tossed some fish to the dolphins, who gathered in excitement. He patted Little Mermy on the head when he swam up to the side. Good boy, he said, as the dolphin squeaked and snatched another fish out of the air. He is, Shelley said, forgetting her worries for a moment. The dolphins had that effect on her, and as much as she hated to admit it, so did Enrique. She could still remember when Little Mermy was born that spring in the aquarium. It was a big deal to have a newborn in captivity. The tiny dolphin baby had grown up and was basically a mischievous teenager now. Well, the dolphin equivalent anyway. Remember when he stole my brother's hat? Enrique said, tossing another fish. Shelley giggled. Oh, I heard about that. He snatched it right off his head, then dragged it through the exhibit to show off his new find. Enrique smiled. Yeah, my brother wasn't thrilled about that. He still had the original stickers on it. Hazards of working at an aquarium, she said, smiling at the dolphin pod happily munching on their fish snacks. You know, sometimes I think they're smarter than us, and they're definitely more sensitive, she said, patting Little Mermy. Just look in their eyes. The dolphin purred and squeaked in appreciation. Enrique looked at her. Their eyes met. That's so weird, he said with a lopsided grin. Thought I was the only one who believed that. Ha, same, she said with a smile. When Enrique finished feeding them, Shelley led him over to the catwalk that crossed above the tanks, where they sat with their feet dangling over the dolphin exhibit. She looked down at the gloves hiding her webbed fingers. The scarf remained wrapped firmly around her neck. He nudged her shoulder. Hey, really, it can't be that bad. She sighed. You have no idea. Try me, he said, nudging her again. Promise I won't judge. Is it about your parents? She shook her head. You'll just call me nerd or fish lover like everyone else. Well, I like nerds, especially ones who are into marine biology. Shelley hesitated. Kendall's sneering face in the locker room flashed through her head. But then she looked at Enrique, his kind eyes, the prominent dimples in his cheeks. He wasn't like the other kids. Neither of them was. It was refreshing. She felt like he might understand. It seemed worthy to take it a chance. Besides, carrying this secret around was making her even more anxious. What made problems unbearable, she decided, was dealing with them alone. That made everything a million times worse. She took a deep breath, feeling her gills flare. Her stomach churned with fear, but she forced the words out anyway. Okay then, she said, fiddling with her scarf. I did see something, but it wasn't a ghost. Not a ghost? He asked. Well, that's good. No, it was a witch, she said. And not just any witch. It was a sea witch. She waited for him to laugh, call her crazy, or taunt her with names. But he didn't. His eyes met hers. Wow. A real sea witch? Did she grant you a wish? Shelley's eyes nearly bugged out of her head. Wait, how do you know about that? Don't tell me you haven't heard the old fairy tales, he said. Fairy tales? She asked. Listen, my family goes back a long way in Triton Bay. My grandfather used to tell us all sorts of colorful stories before bedtime, when we were kids. He was a fisherman, Enrique said. And some had to do with a sea witch? Shelley guessed. He nodded. Yeah, but I didn't realize she was real. Oh, she's real, all right, Shelley said with a shudder. And she did grant me a wish. It sounds stupid, but I wanted to become the fastest swimmer. Reflexively, she glanced at the ocean in the distance. It churned with blue-black waves. Was Ursula listening in? That day you found the ocean. Is that when it happened? He asked. She nodded, took a deep breath to still her nerves, then pulled off her scarf, revealing her gills in all their glory. She expected him to recoil in disgust like Kendall had when she seen her hand. Instead, he studied her neck in fascination. His eyes roved over the slits, and he watched as they flared open when she breathed. He didn't say anything for a long moment. She began to regret showing him. Finally, he spoke up. I knew you were looking a little green around the gills. But, Shelley rolled her eyes. His voice trailed off, but then his eyes lit up. Are those what I think they are? Yep, Shelley said. Do they work? He asked. Yeah, she said, feeling self-conscious. I can breathe underwater. I found out at swim practice. I still raise my head like everyone else, but I don't really have to anymore. This is amazing. You have an actual superpower. That's so rad. Yeah, I guess I didn't think of it that way. And that's not all. Shelley pulled off her gloves, then slipped off her shoes and socks. She splayed out her fingers and toes, showing them the delicate webbing that stretched between her digits. His eyes widened. Wow, you weren't kidding. Then he grinned and did something unexpected. He ran to the catwalk and dove into the ocean, letting out a joyous yelp as he plunged below the surface. Remembering how the waves swept her out to sea the last time she'd been out there, Shelley ran to the catwalk and peered into the frothy waves. There was no sign of Enrique. Her heart hammered. What if he never came up? But then he suddenly broke through the surface. I love nature. He plunged back under the water and popped up again. Come on, fish girl, he called out, splashing water toward her. Let's see what you can do. Shelley hesitated. The last time she fell off the catwalk, she'd almost drowned. But that had been due to a big wave. An unnatural one, she realized now. And back then, she didn't have special superpowers, as Enrique called them. She dove into the water, feeling the brisk crack of the surface breaking around her. Then the reassuring touch of seawater on her skin and in her gills. Nothing felt better or more natural to her. She swam down deep, then aimed for the surface. She broke through it, almost like a dolphin, leaping out of the water, then diving back down. A wild pod of dolphins swam by and joined her in her underwater revelry, swimming around her and nudging her on. Enrique watched in awe. She stayed under for a long time, then surprised him by surfacing behind him. Boom! He startled, then grinned. Watching you swim like that, well, it's incredible. So you're not freaked out? She said. You don't think that I'm totally disgusting? Okay, to be honest, he said, bobbing in the water beside her, I am a little freaked out. It's not like you meet a half fish, half human every day, right? But disgusted? Not at all. Really? She said. He nodded. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Ugh, more like a horrible nightmare, she snorted. Nightmare? You can breathe underwater and probably swim faster too. Yep, I crushed the other swimmers at the last swim meet and broke the official record. No joke? She nodded, remembering her victory and feeling excited about it for the first time. When I dove into the pool, it felt like I belonged there. It was the most incredible feeling in the world. Her voice trailed off. I'm guessing there's a catch? It's a long story, she said. Basically, if I don't help the sea witch steal the Triton from the main exhibit, then this will all become permanent. I'll turn into a fish for all eternity. He blinked at her, taking that in. Wait, the Triton? Why would she want that old thing? You'd better tell me the whole story. Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. They waded out of the ocean onto the beach and walked back toward the aquarium, and Shelley told him everything from the beginning, dropping the cup in the ocean, the Nautilus and the nightmare, making her wish and signing the contract, then waking up with gills. When she finished, he studied her. Wow, that is some story. You don't believe me, she said. Oh no, I believe you, he said, pointing to her gills. Anyway, that's too crazy to make up. Plus, like I said, I've heard of the sea witch. I just didn't realize the stories were real. Wait, that's it, Shelley said excitedly. Maybe the old stories can help us. Right, there's an old myth about her. My grandfather used to talk about it. Something about her haunting sailors who got lost in storms. Anything else, she said? Maybe he knew about a way to help, Shelley, that didn't involve the Triton at all. He shook his head. It was a long time ago. I'm sorry. I don't remember very much. Right, she said, feeling crushed. Thanks anyway. But I have an idea, he said, perking up. There's a special library at the private college with a lot of history about Triton Bay. Old books, original documents. My brother told me about it. Maybe we could do some research. That's so nerdy, she said, nudging him. And so awesome at the same time. Totally is, he said with a thumbs up. She bit her lip. Maybe we can find out more about the sea witch. She said her name was Ursula, and why she wants the Triton so badly. I don't trust her, not one bit. He nodded. And maybe we can find a way to stop this fish transformation from happening to you. I mean, I do love fish and all, but you make a pretty great human. Suddenly the wind whipped up. A bolt of lightning struck the sea. It flashed with bright emerald light, unnatural light. Shelley waited for the deep rumble of thunder that always accompanied lightning, but instead, cackling rose from the waves. The laughter grew louder. Did you hear that? Enrique said, casting his gaze out to the ocean. What was that? Shelley swallowed hard against the sick feeling in her stomach. That's the sea witch. She must have been listening to us. They backed away from the water. The laughter died down, drifting away, but it had been unmistakable. And for the first time, Shelley had a witness. That meant something important. She wasn't dreaming. This was real. We have to do something, Enrique said, looking afraid. Yeah, Shelley studied her hands. And whatever we do, we have to act fast.